Welcome and namaste, dear friends. Good to have you back with me today for Chapter 6 of Aware in the World of Sleep. This is actually episode number 8 of this wonderful book. And we'll be dealing with Principle 4, which is a very unusual principle. I'm sure the other ones have been to some of you as well, but this one is really unusual. It's not long, but I really suggest that you spend some time with this one and understand that when you speak of God, you're speaking of something separate from us, which is what causes all of our problems. We're not separate. Okay, here we go. Principle 4. Expressing the faith of God is the key to spiritual fulfillment. And the Codex Miraclitus, Greek philosopher. It is wise to listen, not to me, but to the Word, and to confess that all things are one. God itself. We must be careful to discern the distinction between expressing our faith in something we call God and expressing the faith of something we call God. We'll begin this way. The fulfillment we speak of in this principle is related to conscious awareness of wisdom and what it produces, how we embodied it. We are the perfection of this consciousness individualized. When we say we're placing our faith in something we call God, and thus we're advanced enough to understand that God is really nothing but our highest self, we will have separated ourselves from God, the truth of our being. And frankly, that's impossible, even though we're not aware of it. In the process, we have set ourselves up for the pain and suffering that separation engenders. That cannot fail. Separation from the truth works just that way. By separating ourselves from the truth, we also make God into some kind of Santa Claus, some external gift giver to whom we pray or beg for goods and services, or try to fool into thinking we're really better than God might think we are. In this context, we also end up saying things like, how could God have let this child die? Or that war happen? Or why did God heal this person and not that one? God knows nothing of such things. Wisdom has no such vocabulary. Its only vocabulary is that of truth. And truth is only sacred and spiritual, not worldly or material in nature. And disease, war, and death are not found there. How many have prayed for such to end and change, only find that such requests are not dealt with or are denied? Wars go on. People die. They stay ill. And yet we thank God that more have not died in vain. Because such prayers do not seem to be answered, does this mean that there is no real God? Or that perhaps we are not good enough to have our prayers honored? Or that God does not know of such things, and thus cannot trouble itself with them? Does it say that we have placed our conviction in the lap of some external idol to worship, one of the many false gods to which we pray, instead of understanding the real God of the spiritual world that functions only on a spiritual level? These beliefs are the result of mankind's wounded view that humans are separate from the wisdom they impart when consciously aware. Some ideas about faith. Some take faith to mean the trust they put in the church to which they belong, or the religion to which they subscribe. One is asked, what is your faith? And the answer sounds something like this. Oh, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm whatever. Some put their faith in God, in church, or even their spouse. In religious doctrine, faith refers to some outer authority in which we place our trust. What outer authority? What outer authority? In such a reference to faith, we immediately have created a dualistic life and one of separation from the very wisdom we say we have faith in, even if we call that wisdom God. Still another way to deal with the meaning of faith is to see it in a metaphysical context. Metaphysical faith refers to the duty or commitment to fulfill only what we are, divine idea, or wisdom individualized. In this understanding, we often say we are keeping faith. Just what is it we are honoring by duty or commitment? We are honoring the truth we find as we listen in the stillness of our hearts, the meaning and direction we gain from our highest self, our innate wisdom. In this way, the faith we express is honoring the inseparability of wisdom and its demonstration. The fulfillment of the demonstration is contained in wisdom itself, just as whatever the oak tree needs fulfillment is contained from the acorn from which it rises. In both cases, the sacred effect or seeming miracle arises out of the commitment of that which nourishes it. In the case of the oak tree, nourishment is about soil and sunshine and water. In the case of humans, demonstration is about the nourishment found in our awareness, activated by the truth heard inwardly. The faith of God is exhibited by fulfilling a commitment only to a single gift of truth, discerned from his endless source of wisdom. The inspirational gift is fulfilled simply through our awareness of the idea, which finds activation from the natural expression of our being. All we need to remember is that God, or our innate wisdom, and we are one, not separate. It is this inseparability that defines the faith of God, or of wisdom. The faith of God becomes our spiritual reality as long as we activate life out of that framework. That to which we give faith will be fulfilled in all its likeness. Having said that, there is one legitimate context for having faith in God. The only way the faith of God can be activation of truth is when we understand God's real nature, and thus our own innate real nature. As we know by now, that is GNOW, God's perfection is exercised through the activation of wisdom, the Christ we call spiritual awareness. Or let me reverse that, the spiritual awareness Jesus called Christ. Therefore, because of God's perfection of being, to say that we have faith in God is to say that we are expressing faith in our perfection of being. Metaphysically speaking, then, faith is fulfillment befitting what we really are, moment by moment, knowing that the effects of such fulfillment is nothing but a reflection of that perfection of being. Such is the inseparability of our oneness. In reality, this demonstration is the only real justice that can be levied onto life. To do otherwise, to live from a basis of or false belief in ego or mass consciousness and our separation, is unjust. It's unjust because it shifts the truth of our being into error, the only real unjust effect perpetrated on the mankind. Said another way, demonstration of truth is the only real form of integrity. All else clearly demonstrates the lack of clarity in our integrity. To simplify even further, to live on our spiritual integrity is the only justice we can apply to life. Otherwise, life becomes unjust and reflects that injustice everywhere. How can giving life something than or other than our truth of being be just to the world? When we think about wanting justice to be served in a particular situation or circumstance, we might well want to apply this metaphysical standard to life. Otherwise, real justice will not have been served. Instead, some cold, judgmental application would have been applied, and from this only a few steps towards real justice can be the result, if any at all. Why not apply the metaphysical standard to all that all life brings us, so real justice can reign throughout? It is in this awareness that justice is truly served. The is and isn't of prayer. Be careful now. Pay special attention. This kind of faith, the faith of God, renders prayer unnecessary, at least as most of us practice prayer, as a plea for mercy or healing or change. We may feel good when we do it, yet the fact that those who are so-called praying are engaging their religious commitment in the moment for another's good speaks to the power of their sacred intention and not to the power of prayer itself. Metaphysically, prayer is unnecessary because all is already complete and just perfect. So what is to pray for? To be happy, fulfilled, prosperous, healed, and secure? Such things already exist at the heart of our sacred consciousness. In another sense, inviting God into our physical experience is tantamount to inviting God into ego consciousness. How unjust can that be? How can perfection hold our self-created dream as real? Wisdom knows nothing of ego consciousness because ego consciousness is only a dream. It's something we have made up to justify feeling that we are our body and separate from God. Thus we gain a direction to shut our mouths and listen only to wisdom, being obedient and surrendering to life's calling to us, and that alone. It is only we who apply our limited thinking to manifest some relatively minor effect in wisdom's place, like a larger house, yet another car, or a special companion. Such desires make a mockery of real prayer. To pray that way is to make God in our image, an ill-formed image of ego consciousness. Thus we embed the false notion of duality yet again, and our separation. Only in wisdom or God is prayer found and already answered. All prayer needs is our conscious awareness in order to activate it into being. And when we do, it is sure to be being. On the opposite side of the fence from wisdom, the only real consciousness, we, in our conviction of a world apart, produce war and poverty. We create war and poverty in the world of separation, the material world of duality. Thus it is ours to fix, not for some entity separate from us we call God. To invite God into ego consciousness is to invite wisdom into nothingness. How can no thing benefit anyone or anything? We only need to remember to stay in our awareness of wisdom's perfection, and war and poverty disappear in that consciousness. While expressing our being as wisdom, we can hardly be confused by the erroneous ideas of war and poverty, despite their appearance. Yet, in a state of ego consciousness, there are many who do exactly that, confuse the two, even to the point that they self-righteously think they are being spiritually correct when activating war and acts that contribute to poverty of any kind, in any place. So why should we pray for something we already are or have? It's all about what consciousness we're allied with. Joe Goldsmith, father of the powerful Infinite Way work, tells us that it is paganistic to pray for God to remove what does not exist. And it is heathenish to pray to God to do God's own work in caring for the universe. Our task then is to look beyond such illusions to find the truth that wisdom is eternal, infinite, and immortal. Like does beget like. We do not pray for good in our head or with our mouths through our words. Prayer is listening for the affirmation of the eternal presence of wisdom in our heart. Being centered in wisdom, the truth itself, denies the presence of any belief that is counter to truth. Said in perhaps an even stronger way, prayer as usually practiced is the ego's tool and a projection of erroneous need. How can we righteously pray for need when we are already complete? There is no counterforce or power or need separate from that embedded in wisdom. There is only wisdom, period. All the rest testifies to a belief in separation from wisdom. This is the absolute in prayer, communion with inner truth, wisdom, our highest good. Go into your closet and pray, Jesus told us, meaning to listen to the voice heard in our hearts, of course, the voice of silence. It is there where we find the bread, that is inner knowing, G-N-O-W-I-N-G, and the wine, spiritual activation, of which the material plane knows not. It is the truth and its activation of which we are now aware, and to which we are now to commit all our conviction, our faith, the faith of God, the faith of our innate wisdom. Expressing this faith is the key to spiritual fulfillment, and none other. Well, I told you it was shorter. It's about half the time as the usual episode, but it's pithy, P-I-T-H-Y, please. And I think it will be time well spent. Again, I'm not selling books, but I am selling books, but I'm not pushing books. It might be good to spend some time with this as I read it to you or in the book. As you know, I like to close each session with a little something that I have found on the internet that may serve as a kernel for you to put in your popper and pop a nice bag of corn with. Here's the one by Matt Kahn, K-A-H-N. Most people do not see their beliefs. Instead, their beliefs tell them what to see. This is a simple difference between clarity and confusion. Let me say that one again, because the wording there is a little bit catchy, but I think it is a superb statement. Thank you, Matt. Most people do not see their beliefs. Instead, their beliefs tell them what to see. This is a simple difference between clarity and confusion. Oh boy. All right then, spend a little time with prayer. Spend a little time with Principle 4, which was expressing the faith of God as the key to spiritual fulfillment. See what it really means to you. Do not go into your head, your intellect. Do not go to the Bible or any other spiritual book. Just listen for resonance within. Do you resonate with any of what's being said? If not, how would you say it? That's the real thing here. It's not to follow me or my books. It's rather to open up into your own real self, your own innate truth, and to speak from that and that alone. And so, rather than your beliefs, speak from your truth. I hope you have a lovely week, folks. I hope you'll be back with me this next week for Principle 5, which is service to your inner truth is the highest form of love. Indeed it is. Have a wonderful week. Be well. Be happy. Be loved. Namaste, everyone. I love you.